Welcome to the Eating at a Meeting podcast. I'm your host, Tracy Stuckrath, dietary needs expert, certified meetings manager, certified food protection manager. I have searched the globe to find people and businesses who are creating safe, sustainable, and inclusive food and beverage experiences for their employees, guests, and communities. In each episode, you will find authentic conversations about how food and beverage impacts inclusion, sustainability, culture, community, health, and wellness. I know that sounds like a lot, but we're going to cover it all. Are you ready to feed engagement, nourish inclusion, and bolster your bottom line? If so, let's go. I am excited that this month is Food Allergy Awareness Month and Celiac Disease Awareness Month. If you didn't know, every May, it is that. And this month, I am loading up my speakers with experts in all facets of both food allergies and celiac disease. And my guest today is probably the first chef at a hotel that I talked to about dietary restrictions when I started this 12 years ago. He is the food safety manager at the property, as well as the assistant executive chef at South Point Casino in Las Vegas. Chef Keith?
Yeah.
Corbin, I'm so excited to talk to you.
Oh, likewise, Tracy. Always good to be in the corner with you.
Well, thank you very much. And I think Carolyn Moassisi introduced us.
Yes. Yeah.
And you came to meet me when I was speaking at a show in Las Vegas at the Mandalay Bay.
Mandalay Bay, yeah.
And so we've both been involved in the fair food allergy walks and
yes.
Talked numerous times. So I am so intrigued and so thankful for what you do around food allergies and food safety. And so I want to really dive into that. As a hotel chef and as a food safety, trainer, what do we need to know about food allergies and celiac disease coming from your perspective? Well,
I think first of all, we need to take it serious. I think there's I do a lot of training around town. In 2009, I was probably like some of the chefs that I train now. Didn't know a whole lot. I mean, I grew out of a olive allergy, but I didn't even know when I started drooling and crazy things started to happen. I didn't even know what it was because, the little cocktail olives, I used to eat those like crazy. And then one day crazy things happened. And not knowing that it was an allergen, I just kind of did what most people do and kind of blew it off. But I think the first thing I would just say is that, chefs, hospitality professionals really just need to take it serious. And then I think training is key. You got to have the awareness has to be so, over the top, that, it can't be the customer comes in and says allergen and you look at them like they have four heads. I mean, I think it's our responsibility to do the work. And in 2009, meeting professionals like yourself. And again, I didn't even know I had an allergen until I started getting smarter. And I said, oh, by the way, maybe I was allergic to something in the olives and I grew out of it. So I'm cool now. I have a daughter who has an avocado allergy, but she got it late in life in her 20s. So I didn't grow up managing allergens, but I have a lot of my babies. I call them all my babies. From 2009 to now, I've had the honor, to serve a lot of my babies and learn from, those faces of fear, as I like to say. And it's so rewarding at the end of the day when you take that fearful face and turn it into a face of joy.
Well, and yes, it is 100% that. And I know you've got so many stories, but what I want to point out to people is that your babies are adults, they're kids. And when they're traveling through or they're going to Las Vegas for an event, they're going to stay at your property because they know you and they know that you're going to do it right. So all the other properties have lost their business because they've been burned or gotten sick or something.
Sure.
I mean, and I think that's a good, that's a sales opportunity,
Yeah. Well, Tracy, I like to say attitude, commitment, knowledge, right? Because and this better than I when we think about being an inconvenience or being a bother. And unfortunately, there's still a lot of hospitality professionals that think that a dietary restriction has to be a bother. I mean, I think it takes planning, and then you have to be committed. So, I mean, here, and I know you've seen this too. I mean, I've been around the table when folks are sharing their stories about, losing a family member to food allergies. So I take it serious. My team's committed, and then I go. I think the third leg of the stool is knowledge. You don't have to have a PhD in allergen awareness, but you do have to know, the basics, and then you have to have standards in place that address, each of the, when we talk about the flow of food, from the time you tell me allergen, there's a path that meal is going to take, and we need to be aware and have the right attitude and be committed.
Okay, so there's two things that I want to talk about, that flow of food.
Yeah.
Because I talk about it as the event food chain. And
Okay, sure.
it starts from the attendee,
Yes.
communicating their need, but
Yes.
they also have to have the opportunity to communicate their need.
Understood. Yes.
Which is the meeting planner. And then it goes to the convention services or catering services manager.
Yeah.
And then the chef, to me, the salesperson for the hotel is in there as well.
Yes.
And then the chef and the line cooks, the banquet captain, and the servers and the bartenders.
Yeah.
Talk to us about the flow from your perspective.
So if the director of catering or the sales manager who is dealing with the group, and here I'm fortunate that I know everybody, that's where the conversation has to start, right? And what I've been proud of in the 8 or so conferences that we've done here is my dietary restriction list I had well in advance of the event, and that for a chef is like gold. So I would say when the meeting planners or you're meeting with the catering director or the sales team, that's where you tell me. That's where you give me information. And then if they, know their group well, getting that information ahead of time is not going to be, an issue. And once I have information, then I can plan. Because as you know, a catering event can be fun. It's normally stressful. And when you get in the mix of putting plates together and then you get thrown 12 or 15 dietary restrictions, that throws your whole game off. So proper planning is key.
Wholeheartedly. And I mean, and I did an event, I worked an event at MGM and we had 693 dietary requests.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Like, hello, right?
Yeah, you bet.
What to do with that? And that does require a lot of pre-planning.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I do love about what your training is, and I had this experience at your property, is that you've actually really trained your front of house.
You bet.
So tell us what that entailed, and is that training constant? And, especially now with COVID,
Yeah.
Are you retraining everybody? How does that work?
So we're one team. Okay. So it's not front of the house, back of the house. We're one team. So when I train, we all train together. So I'm a master trainer for Allertrain, and that's what we use here. So starting off, I took the entire team. There's 400 plus. I took them through the Serve Safe course, and that was okay. But for me, for someone who's new to allergens, you talking to a computer is not the way to go. So Allertrain is in the classroom, and that's where I like to be. So we took everyone through allergen training. Matter of fact, I just scheduled refresher training for the, next week. So we do it yearly. Of course, 2020 we weren't in the building, but we so everyone in the building has the Allertrain certification. Food, we're separate here, food and beverage. But the food team and catering team all have the Allertrain certification, and I'm getting ready to recertify. Starting with managers first, and we trickle down. So it can't just be the management team, because I am not on the line. So that cook that is making your meal has to be just as knowledgeable as I.
And then your servers.
Same. We're all one team. Servers are in the room. And what I like to do is when I set the schedule up, the servers are in the room with management. So if there's any questions, we can all talk through it.
Yeah. Well, and that's important because the managers, I talked to a hotel years ago, like a decade ago or whatever, and the food and beverage director is like, yeah, everybody with food allergies can walk through our buffet. They know what to look for. And executive chef comes in and he's like, oh no, we do food allergies. We make special plates all the time.
Yeah.
Right. And that disconnect with management is kind of hard. Because I was taken aback by the food and beverage director's comment.
Sure. Well, I tell you, Tracy, my general manager who manages allergens, his wife he's in all my training. So from Mr. Growney to my food director, they are in my training. So he's just as aware as everyone else. So respectfully, the food and beverage director that you were dealing with, you gotta get them in the heart. And
right.
if they're not feeling that heart thing going on, then you're just a customer. And I always show ugly stuff in my training class because I think if I can touch your heart, I got you. And most of my team, when they come out of the room, some are grabbing tissue, some are saying, wow. And, I think those are the things that really make the difference.
Yeah. And, to be honest with everybody, the ugly thing is death, and I actually got reached out on LinkedIn the other day. A friend is like, hey, my friend's daughter died of food allergies and she wants to do this. Can you help me? And there should not be law. There's a law in California. There's Natasha's law in London and and there should not be laws named for kids who died of food allergies.
Absolutely. Yeah. But Tracy, my old boss used to say, you never get a street light put in until someone dies. And it's unfortunate that that's the mentality. But I'm happy, and I'll just share this with you real quick. And this is several years ago. We had gone up to the Nevada legislature. We were trying to get some measures put through. And Senator Smith, who was the spokesperson for us, was addressing all of these senators. And we found out that out of, I think it was like 8 of them, 6 of them lived allergens, right?
Oh, wow.
And when she started sharing those stories, right, then you saw the tears, right? So I think, the whole goal isn't to make people cry.
Right.
But Senator Smith, may she rest in peace, shared some ugly with these folks, the grandmothers on the board and, that kind of thing. And there was not a dry eye. And I think sometimes, you just gotta hit that heartstring.
Yeah. Well, and I was talking to Dr. Ruchi Gupta.
Yeah.
With 1 in 10 adults having a food allergy and 1 in 8 kids having a food allergy.
Yeah.
It's like 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon, right?
Yes,
that's pretty prevalent. And she and I were chatting. And so this is another question that I want to ask. So the FASTER Act was just passed, April 24th.
Yeah.
And which for everybody, it's food allergy, safety, training, education, and research. I think that's right.
FASTER, yes.
Yeah, it's FASTER. And but part of the FASTER Act, besides putting some more prevalence onto research, is the fact that sesame was just named the top 9th allergen in the U.S.
Yes.
And I think everybody's going to hear me talk about it in every one of the videos this month. But it's really important because what Dr. Gupta also said and reminded me is that sesame is hidden in much more things than probably milk and eggs are,
Yeah, sure.
So, it's in spices and a variety of other things. And so as a chef, looking at those different allergens and now adding a new one that is even more hidden.
Yeah.
How is that going to change your perspective in the kitchen? Does it?
Well, nothing really changes for me because I've always looked at the top 10. I include corn in that.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I include corn. So we have what I like to call food handler cards, which lists all of the top 10 because I did add sesame because I knew it was coming, and corn is probably going to come one day as well. So procedure-wise, Tracy, doesn't change for me. An allergen for me is an allergen. So the protocol and the SOP doesn't change. We may have to do a little bit, but I get sesame now, so it's nothing. It's nothing new. But for me, the same procedures would be followed, even if sesame had never been mentioned, and I'm hearing it for the first time. We're going to still check the label like we always do. But the one thing, I would say this to chefs out there, what I always try to do is just eliminate all of the allergens, period. So sometimes, that's cooking a meal and you're only using herbs and salt and pepper, because allergen guests don't eat fancy. They just want to eat safely. So I think for the chefs who are out there who think, well, I can't add flavor, well, that's not true, right? Because you go back centuries ago when we didn't have those spices, we were able to make our food taste good though. So.
Right. Yeah. I mean, we want a meal that is flavorful. We don't want, as a restaurant here in town, the boring chicken with cold broccoli, right?
Right. Yeah.
I probably should stop saying that about them. I never mentioned the restaurant name, but you can do a lot with flavor with different spices, and you can use fresh spices and fresh herbs versus using the boxed or the container, herbs, right?
Right. Well, you shouldn't here if, depending on what the allergen is, we never use container, spices. We always go fresh. But Tracy, the other thing on a typical, say my Italian room, I've got a ton of ingredients. Right now we have separate ingredients for allergens, but for a chef, when you mentioned the chicken, there's so many things that I could do to that chicken to give you some love versus just giving you something that's boring
and dry and okay, so in the back of the house you're prepping all of this stuff. Do you have separate equipment? Do you have the handled? Do you have separate fryers? How do you handle those allergen meals?
So if it's an item that's coming off the menu that would normally go in the fryer, we'll do that in a pan. Okay. Listen, go back to old school. We didn't have deep fryers when I was growing up. Didn't know what one was. So it's easy to get a pan, heat up grease. And the other thing is you want to make the customer aware that it's going to take a little extra time, so we would heat it up and do it separate. But yes, we use, San Jamar came out with an allergen kit some time ago. We have those in every, actually multiple in every kitchen. And we've used those for about the last 6 years.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. And they're
that's purple handled, right?
All purple. The case is purple, and then it has tongs. It has a spatula in there, and it has a knife, and then with a cutting board. So
okay.
Yeah,
because, and just mentioning all of those things, all of those different pieces of equipment, and including aprons and towels, and those have to be changed out when you're working with food allergic meal.
Sure. Well, the one thing I find with clothing, 99% of the time, clothing doesn't come in contact with anything. It's the hands. So we have a purple allergen glove in place. And the neat thing is with our rooms, there's a designated allergen person. So because when you have a busy line, and say, for instance, something comes in the broiler, I can't have, that person. So we have one designated person that would stop what they're doing, wash, do their thing, and prepare the meal. So it's just all a matter of putting things in place that work. And keep in mind, every kitchen is different. So what I do is not the mold. It's for everybody. You've got to take what I do and then make it work for you.
Yeah, because some people don't have multiple kitchens to work in or have bigger spaces to do it. And probably some don't have a dedicated person, but you could educate and make somebody the dedicated person, right?
Sure, if you want to, absolutely. Right. Out of the 11 restaurants we have here, the only two that, Del Mar Deli, there's just too much going on there. So we don't normally, if we have to do an allergen there, I shy away from it, but you're right. I mean, if a chef wants to do it,
Mm-hmm.
he or she will do it.
Right. And somebody made a chef from South Africa today made a comment on my live broadcast that just and I don't even remember exactly how he said it, but basically the respect and the diligence needed to do it needs to be taken seriously by our industry.
100%. I mean, if you, if that allergen meal comes in and you kind of look at it like, oh, right, just kind of no big deal, I got this, then you're going to make a mistake, and mistakes are made. But if you're serious about it, and on the flip side that you have a life, and that's why I tell my team that we literally have a life in our hands, and we need to take it serious. But and that's what I would say to all the foodies out there. I mean, these are lives, and precious lives, and you have a right to feel safe in a restaurant.
Oh, I love that. And I just looked it up and I think this is really interesting how he said it. Offerings and operations could significantly reduce the physical expenditure and improved quality of life.
Yeah.
And so on that note, by doing this and being this proactive about allergens, you get people that come specifically to your property for you to stay with you, but have you seen a change and in positivity in bringing new customers?
Well, I know I get a lot of repeat customers, but now that my email is on our website, I do get a lot of. As a matter of fact, Saturday we'll have a family in that reached out to me, multiple allergens, and so we're gonna have a wonderful time with them. But I go back to, because I deal with chefs, all the time, and I think a lot of them think when you're busy, oh boy. But if you have a system in place, and again, you realize that life on the other end, once and this, Kendall Hollinger, Kendall, out of California.
Okay,
Kendall is, so when Kendall first came to me in 2011, and her mother gave me the story of this baby's life, and she was 9 at the time. Kendall, when she comes here, I'm the only one that cooks for her. And she just, and those are the things that a chef has to realize. Once an allergen guest trusts you, you have a family for life, and that's the beauty for me.
Yeah, and because they trust you and they know you're going to do right by them and create them a meal, and I mean that to me is reoccurring business. It's because you're in a hotel that's a head in a bed.
Yeah, right. Okay, head in the bed. But you're right though. I mean, and then word of mouth. I mean,
right.
Because if I see some Facebook pages sometimes, hey, we're going to Vegas. Where should you eat? Right. And and I always tell my team, listen, every good team has a great quarterback, and I'm happy to be quarterbacking allergen awareness. But I could not do it without them. If they didn't buy in, we'd just be another property. But no, I get a thrill, when a customer comes here and they send Mr. Gallin, our owner, a letter saying, "Hey, we ate in the coffee shop, and the server was just knowledgeable." Those are things that just make you shine a little better.
Right. Well, and it's. And I'm glad that you do that because of the servers, because one, to me, it gives them a greater sense of their job, and saying, hey, we are because to me, they're the front facing to the customer, and you're in the back of the house, you're making it, but you're not necessarily dealing with that person. Yeah,
no, 100%. That's why I say we're one team. And even when we have conflict, meaning, I have an allergen pad in place. A lot of the things that I have in place here, we trial by error. So we've made our mistakes and we've learned from them. But when we talk about the flow, I look at the flow from the time you tell me to the time, that server is bringing that item out, and I try to look at that and put all my critical control points in place and go from there. But I think the server is key. because if you give me the right information and I write it down correctly, that there should be no kinks in the system.
Yeah. Well, there's a story. I don't think I've told you this, but I had an allergic reaction to pineapple January of 2020, and I was at an event, and it was in a drink.
Oh, wow.
In a green smoothie. And the green smoothie said kale and, something else on it. And I was drinking it and I'm like, ooh, this tastes like pineapple. And
oh, wow. Yeah.
I've never really I've eaten pineapple like my whole life. And then all of a sudden I had this. And I went back to look at the label that was on, next to the beverage. Didn't say pineapple on it. So I'm like, okay, maybe I'm just crazy. And, this is just in my head. But I stayed there for a few minutes and this server came out and she pulled out the note from her pocket and she had written down what was in the dish or what was in the drink because she noticed, and I love this, she noticed that the other chef that was making the restocking of that juice used a different recipe. So they had two different recipes with the same name.
Oh, yeah.
And so that's what happened. I mean, and security came and checked my EpiPens and all of that stuff. I told Ruchi this and she's like, why did you not give yourself the EpiPen? I'm like, because I was about to get on stage, but that's not an excuse.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And then again, I should go and get followed up and get an allergy test to see if I have actual allergy to pineapple. But but to me, that server needs a gold medal, right?
Yeah.
Because she noticed something different.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's where that team comes in that you mentioned.
But I wish that they would have caught it before you had the drink.
Right.
Well, yeah. I mean, if you only focus on the kitchen and you don't focus on the front, then the front, they're not giving you good information. So even my GM, like I said, no pressure on the team, but when he's sitting in class with us, and he lives allergens. So it's a little different for those who live allergens versus those who do not. But I have a lot of workers on staff that have food allergies and they manage it, and I keep on them about their EpiPen and things like that. We try to, I have one that's definitely allergic to seafood. So we keep them completely away from seafood, but no. And we've said server many times, and I think they are the backbone because it definitely, and Tracy, and I know you know this when you go out, if that server makes you feel comfortable, then you just feel comfortable, and that's what I try to give to my team, and then we like to talk about the risk takers, right? Mm-hmm. The ones who just want what they want. And I love having those conversations with them. And I never expect my team to have a grown-up conversation with an allergen guest who wants shrimp when they know that they're allergic to shrimp. So I love those conversations because I think a lot of them have never seen the Kendall Hollingers and the Brian Halm story. They never heard those stories, and I think those are important.
Well, and I think meeting planners experience that diner a lot because they're like, oh, hey, I'm gluten-free. And then they go and drink beer or they go eat. They're like, oh, I can have this bread, but not that bread. And they're not necessarily, they could potentially be somebody with food allergies that are just ignoring it.
Yeah, and you bet.
And meeting planners struggle with that because what happens if they do get sick and we've told them that it's included, but they still choose to eat it, right?
Yeah. Well, are the Google guests, the ones they Google and try to diagnose from Google?
Oh,
yeah. I mean, you Google and you get the wrong information. And I think some folks that go out to conferences, but I like to call them the risk takers because we get customers sometimes who believe that a little bit won't hurt. But as you know, as well as I, that trace amount can be deadly. So.
Yep.
So we already know we have a lot of work to do. Yeah.
Well, and the other day I did a video on the sesame thing and I put a sesame seed on my finger and I did it close up. And I'm like, this little tiny thing can actually harm somebody, I mean, And that's even bigger than a crumb,
Yeah.
So it's kind of crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So is there anything else, from, thinking about this that we really need to know based on, as a food safety instructor, what we need to do in planning better for dietary needs?
Well, I mean, just accurate information, I think. Yeah. And the other thing is the folks who only tell us part of the story. I mean, if you have a lot of things going on, trust me with the information. But I think in the beginning, when the planning, then when the event is being planned, that's where it all starts. Because and when you reach out to your attendees, they need to trust you with the information so that you get the right information to us. But I think attitude, commitment, knowledge, training is key. And I would also say to the event planners, you got to ask us questions, because in this day and age, I mean, I started doing this in 2009. And if you remember, we go back to 2000, there's been allergen information around for a while. So there's no excuse for a chef or a food and beverage, a hospitality property restaurant that shouldn't be at least, when you say raise the bar, I mean, everybody's bar should be up here,
right.
When it comes to allergens, because can they be daunting? Sure. But if you have a plan, and like I said, when an allergen comes in on one of our lines, the person doing the allergen doesn't look like, they're not worried, because coffee shop for last month did 250 allergens in 30 days in that room.
What?
Yeah. So I track it. I get a report every month. And that's what I like to share in the managers meeting, right? Because we're doing them. And I try to keep my team, because I don't want them to get complacent. So when you hear that number, and again, gluten is my biggest one. Okay. But again, I try to point out to them, you're doing the numbers, and for you've done 200 plus, and you've done them safely. But I would say to the chefs out there, if you're doing allergens now, which I would imagine everybody is, don't get complacent, right? Don't, if you're not doing 200, that's okay. If you're doing 1 or 2 a week, that's okay. But you got to focus on, the allergen, and that guess has to be, 100%, your focus from the time you start the meal to the time you end the meal. And then normally when that customer sends that comment card in praising you, that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. Okay. So I want to jump back to that 250 from the coffee shop. And so I assume that you have something on the POS system.
We have, yes.
Your register that they mark.
Yeah. So our allergen pad matches our POS system. So I have a allergen screen. So when you put in allergen, then the allergen screen comes up. It has the top 10. Plus it has, we get a lot of garlic. We get a lot of onions. We get a lot of pepper. We get citrus. We get things like that. So the allergen screen, and again, keep in mind, the allergen screen is only so big. So I can't put everything there. Allergen screen comes up, server punches in XYZ, and then hits send. And when it goes to the kitchen, it prints in red. It says allergen alert, and then it lists all my allergens. Then when the customers copy prints the same way. Allergen, then lists the allergens.
Okay. That's awesome.
Yeah.
What about on your banquet event orders?
So banquets, again, it all starts with the sales manager and the catering director. They have to do their part. And the chef is normally in that mix, which is key, right? So the chef is normally in that mix. And then what I've had in the past is I'll get an Excel sheet with the name of the attendee, their allergens. And then what I also like to ask is, how do you cook for yourself at home? What items do you like? Because sometimes if I know, say for instance, I get a menu and for lack of better, chicken and broccoli is on the menu. But, information up front is key. Right. And then the chef in conjunction with, because we're a team and we all sit down, I'm normally in that conversation. And then we talk through, what the meals will be.
Mm-hmm.
So we just had a banquet, knock on wood, after 14 months. We had a banquet yesterday for 190. I had 30 allergen meals on that banquet. So we did those first out the way, and to keep it simple, we just did the same meal for all of those allergen guests, and then we turned to and did the rest of the meal. So I think you have to have the event planner, catering director, sales team, because they're normally the ones selling the space, right?
Right.
Got to have all those in the room, because you know what I found? Catering director has some information, sales has some information.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, they knew who the chef was, so they reached out to the chef. So everybody has different information. So we all need to be in the same room.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Because it's coming from different perspectives, and the salesperson might be getting it from the meeting planner, but the attendee may have called you, and
absolutely.
Yeah.
A lot of attendees want to talk to the chef, which is okay. But the sales team, in most cases, has started off the conversation. So my event planner has said to the sales team, hey, we've got 30 dietary needs.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now the sales team passes it off to our catering team, but they miss some things, right? You got to be in the same room.
Mm-hmm.
Got to be in the same room.
And go over it, reiterate it at your pre-con meeting.
You bet.
Yeah.
You bet. And that's what in some of the events that we've hosted here that's what we do. Mm-hmm. We're all in the same room. And then, it's not a surprise for you as the event planner as to what we're going to do, because we've given you those instructions. And then we also have to keep in the back of our mind, things change.
Right.
So you just got to be flexible.
That's what this industry is all about.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Well, Chef Keith Norman, I adore you. Thank you
likewise.
So much.
Yeah.
Your work in this industry, and it actually really kind of blows my mind, because I've talked to Leanne, I've talked to you, and we all started this journey about the same time.
Yeah.
And we're getting there. We're really pushing it forward, and I really commend you for sticking with it, and and all of us working towards this. So thank you so much for
your welcome. My pleasure. Allergen lives matter.
Allergen, they do matter.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, everybody, thank you for listening in. This is the Eating at a Meeting podcast, where we talk about how to create safe, inclusive, and sustainable food and beverage experiences. Share this podcast with your friends and family. You can find it on all podcast platforms. And if you're in the meetings industry or you plan food and beverage, join the Eating at a Meeting Facebook group. And we'll see you there. And until then, stay safe and eat well. Thanks for listening to the Eating at a Meeting podcast, where every meal matters. I'm Tracy Stuckrath, your food and beverage inclusion expert. Call me and let's get started right now on creating safe and inclusive food and beverage experiences for your customers, your employees, and your communities. Share the podcast with your friends and colleagues at our Eating at a Meeting Facebook page and on all podcast platforms. To learn more about me and receive valuable information, go to tracystuckrath.com. And if you'd like more information on how to feed engagement, nourish inclusion, and bolster your bottom line, then visit eatingatameeting.com.